What's going on, guys? Stefan, S&E's Garage. In today's video, our Tein lowering springs are coming out, and we are going to be replacing them with a set of RR Racing street and track coilovers. So if you saw my last video where we kind of did our fleet update and we kind of showed you what was going on with all the cars, you'll see that we were not really happy with the final product with these Tein lowering springs. The wheel gap is just not even, and in order to fit my wheels without rubbing or rolling the fenders, I had to dial in a pretty good amount of camber, and I'm not a camber guy. You will never see me be a part of camber gang. I don't like that look. So I haven't even driven the car because it just looks like absolute garbage. So today we're getting our shipment in of our coilovers. So we're gonna go ahead and get you set up on the lift. We're gonna pull the wheels off and we're gonna start disassembling. I'm gonna get everything apart. That way when they come in, I'm ready to just throw them in. So let's start. We're gonna start in the front. Front is easiest. I'm just gonna go ahead, jack it up, put it up on the lift. We're gonna pull the front struts out, and from there we'll go in the back. In the back, we're gonna have to pull the whole trunk liner out, which is a pain in the neck, but we'll get it done. All right, guys, so we're up in the air, front wheels are off. Removing the front strut assemblies is actually super easy. You have 3 bolts up here, they're 14 millimeters, they come right off. And then down here, we just have a 10 millimeter nut here to remove, excuse me, the ABS wire from the body of the strut or shock, whatever you want to call it. And then you have your through bolt here that connects it to the lower control arm. And we just pull that out. That should be a 17 millimeter. And then we can go ahead and drop the shock out. Now, you may have to disconnect your upper control arm here from your steering knuckle just to give you a little bit more clearance to swing that out. I did, so I'll probably do it again. Super easy. I'll get it on video. You take this nut off. Again, it looks like a 17, but first you have to take the little cotter pin out. And then you can see my hammer mark here. You just tap that with a hammer, it shocks it loose, control arm comes up, knuckle drops down, strut comes out. All right, so we're gonna start down here. We're gonna take this 10 millimeter I was telling you about out for the ABS wire. It's basically your wheel speed sensor harness. And we're just going to go ahead, get that out of our way. Okay, I like to thread it back into the bracket. That way I know where it is and I know it's not going to get lost. So now we can go ahead and zip our main strut bolt out. Big one I was telling you about. Then we'll go ahead and move up top. Now it is actually a 19 millimeter, the bottom bolt. So go ahead, zip it off. Like so, right? Here is the nut. Work this bolt out the rest of the way. Okay, there's the bolt. Okay, we're gonna set that aside. Now we're gonna go ahead, take this cotter pin here out for the upper control arm, and we're gonna zip that off. That should be a 17. The 19 is too big if I remember. Yes, that's a 17. Okay. That is out. So now if I go ahead and tap this up here with a hammer, let me just make sure you can see what I'm looking at here. We're gonna tap this with a hammer and you'll see it drop down a little bit. Like so. And you'll see the knuckle drops down, but just for right now, we don't want it to come all the way down. So we're just gonna leave this lightly threaded in. Okay, and now we're gonna move up top. We're gonna take those 14mm bolts out. One. And here is number 2. And we got one more. Now when we pull this last one, you're just going to want to put your hand here on the shock just to make sure it doesn't try to fall out on you. It's not going to because it's still got some tension on it from that lower controller. Okay, let's get that out of the way. Now we can come under here. All right, guys, we got our driver's side strut out. One thing that I did have to do that I completely forgot is you have your sway bar end links on both lower control arms. You're gonna have to take one of those end links off to allow the control arm to drop a little bit. Once you're able to get that control arm to drop, this strut will come right out. Real quick, I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side and then we wait. All right, guys, so we got the front completely apart. You'll see the strut is absent. And on this side, you will also see there's no strut. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna pull my strut tower brace up and out. We're gonna keep it out of the car for right now because once we put the new coilovers in, we're gonna have to play with a couple of things. Number one, we're gonna have to level the car. The strut tower brace isn't gonna get in the way of that, but it is gonna be in the way of the dampening knob. There's just not a whole lot of room for me to get in there to adjust it. So that's gonna come up and out just for the time being. And then once I got the dampening adjusted to where I want it, we'll go ahead and put that back on. But now we're kind of in a holding pattern because I don't want to tear apart the rear until I finish the front. That's just the way I want to do it. I don't want to have tools and bolts and nuts thrown all over the place. So let's just hang tight. Coilovers should be here within a couple hours. We'll go ahead, set them up, and get them in the car. All right, guys, so we got our coils. They're from RR Racing, but they come in a Silver's Neomax box. So I guess RR Racing gets the shock bodies from them and then they customize them. One big difference between any of the other coilovers for the GS-F and the RC-F is going to be here in the front, and that is the use of these helper springs. Now, they also use upgraded Eibach suspension springs, which I like. I've ran Eibach on plenty of other cars. Now, what these helper springs do is they basically make it so this shock, or this spring rather, does not have to be preloaded. And where that's good is when we go to adjust our ride height, we're gonna do it from this collar and not this one. And the reason for that is by
adjusting how much of a gap there is between this spring and this spring, it's going to help limit shock travel in the front to prevent the car from bottoming out, basically, and that is why RR Racing does that. So when we adjust the ride height, we're not doing it from here, we're doing it from this perch here. So let's go ahead, let's get these in the car, let's install them, and let's get rolling. All right, guys, so I know I said I was gonna take the strut tower brace off, but there's actually room for me to get in here and spin the knob, so we're good there. We went ahead, we have the coilovers in. We went ahead, we tightened these down to 49 foot-pounds here. I use the factory bolts, they work better, factory nuts, I'm sorry. We went ahead, put our upper control arm bolt back in with the cotter pin. We installed this little sleeve here in order to mount our ABS sensor. We tightened the bottom shock bolt here, and then we put our sway bar end link back in on the other side. So we are all done here in the front. Now, we just went and did some preliminary checks here, just to kind of make sure that the front of the car was going to be level. I know I'm gonna have to adjust the height, but what we have here is a caliper, and what I'm measuring is the distance between this lock ring and this lock ring. So we're gonna go ahead, I'll show you exactly what we're gonna do. We're just gonna measure that, and we're going to make sure that it matches the other side. Spark notes, I did this already. So here we're at about 3 inches, give or take, so 3.06 inches. So let's go ahead over to the other side. And it was within like a couple points of an inch. So I'm really not that worried about it because, again, we are going to do our final adjustments here once we finish the back of the car. But again, same thing, measuring right there. And we were at 2.97. So it's going to match on both sides. And then just to confirm, I then went ahead and I took a measuring tape here and I went from the hub to the top of the fender like so, and we got 17 inches. And then I came over here and I did the same thing, and we also got 17 inches. So I know corner to corner in the front is going to be even, but I also know that we are going to have to adjust it. Now, when we do go to adjust the height, we are not touching this collar. All we are going to be doing is adding or removing preload here from the shock. And what that is going to do is either give us more shock play or travel or less, and that's going to adjust the ride height. All right, guys, so next up, we're gonna go ahead and take these back wheels off. And we're also going to need our jack over there because we're gonna need to load up the lower control arms in order to drop the springs. And the springs are not going to be reused because obviously we have a coilover with a spring on it. So we are going to have to come into the trunk here. I've already done this in the past. It's not hard. We have to remove this and this inner trunk liner. So we have to take this out. We have to remove this. And then there's a couple panels on either side, and this will all come out. And then we'll have access to the shock towers. We can remove the factory shocks, remove the factory springs under here, and make way for our new coilovers. All right, guys, so we're back here now. We went ahead, like I said, we got the wheels off. So what we have to do now is basically get this spring out of here. And the way to do that is we have to take these two bolts out here. And what that's gonna do with a jack under it, obviously, if you pull them out without a jack under it, the spring will shoot you in the face, so don't do that. What that's gonna do is allow me to drop the lower control arm and pull the spring out of its perch, and then we can go ahead and tackle the shock. So in order for these two bolts to come out and that to drop, we're also gonna have to remove this nut and bolt here on this drag link. So that looks like it's a 17. I'm gonna go ahead and remove that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and get a jack under here and remove these. So we have our coil here on the driver or passenger side, installed. And all that I really did here was I trimmed this little piece of the fender liner here just to give the spring a little bit of extra room. Not really necessary, but it's just something that I did. And then I went ahead and I talked to the guys over at RR Racing, and they informed me that because of how long this damper needs to be in the rear, they couldn't make it long enough to fit in the box and be ready to go out of the box. So he told me as a starting point, he would lengthen this 2 inches. So that's exactly what we did. So from the bottom of the shock mount to this collar, I have 16 inches right now. It was about 14 before we took it out, when we took it out of the box. So we added about 2 inches to it. We got it nice and tight. So now I'm gonna go ahead and get the control arm up back into place, and then we're gonna go tackle the other side. I did go ahead and remove the spring perch from the lower control arm and from the body of the car up here, so that is removed. So now I'll get that side together, come back over here and do the same thing. We got this passenger side here done. Not sure what the torque spec is back here. I just tightened it to the same as the front, 49 foot-pounds. So now I had my spanner wrenches out. I just double checked the preload. I wanted to make sure that both spring perches were exactly the same height from the top of the shock body. That way when I measure from here to here, when I'm adjusting my height, I know it's right. So all I did was back both of these off, and then I tightened this top one up until it just made contact with the spring. I put this up to here, and then I put exactly this thickness, the thickness of the spanner wrench, preload on the back springs here. So all of my numbers from here to here match side to side, and then from the hub to the fender, both of those numbers match. So like I said, it's a good starting point. I know the car should sit equal, and then it's just a game of jacking the car up, spinning the shock body up or down to get the ride height that I'm looking for and the stance that I'm looking for. So the rest of this is kind of just going to be going up and down with the jacks and getting it perfect. So let me mess around with that, and then we'll check it out. All right, guys, so out of the box, this is how it sits. You'll see the rear is pretty high, but again, I did add almost 2 inches of length to those shock bodies. So we are going to jack them up. I'm going to go in, let's say, 1/2 inch increments in the front and rear. Try to lower that 1/2 inch. Try to lower the front, probably about 1/2 inch or so. And then literally just going to keep taking measurements until all 4 corners, or the 2 front corners and the 2 back corners, equal each other. So this is going to be a lot of trial and error. So let me get to this. The thing that you do here is, as you're adjusting, once you're done making your adjustment, you need to drive the car forward and drive it back to unload the suspension, because if you just lower the car down, the tires and the scrub of the suspension are going to have it loaded up, and you're not going to be accurate. So make your measurements, make your adjustments, roll the car, make your measurements again, and then so on and so forth. All right, guys, so this is the finished product for right now. I have the damper set on all 4 shocks to 7 from the hardest, and it's really not that hard of a ride. I might play with that a little bit, but that's after we get it aligned. I don't want to keep driving it like this. We're at about 26 1/4 inches from the ground in the front. The left side is slightly higher. I either have to lower that or raise this side, but I'm going to let these settle overnight. And then in the morning, I'll come out and, fine tune it. And then in the rear, well, first of all, I just want to show you, we got about a finger gap there in the front. And then we mirrored that in the rear. We have about a finger gap. Let's just take a quick measurement for you. So from the ground to the fender, we are at exactly 27 inches. So let's go ahead and do that on this side. "27 inches. Actually, this side could go up a hair. And then over here, we're at about 26 1/4.
And like I said over here,
26 1/8.
so this side's got to come up and that side's got to come up, but I'm going to come out here first thing in the morning after it settles overnight and, you know, fine tune it. But I hope this video helped you. Please like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this on this vehicle and others. We appreciate you guys watching. You guys watching are why we are able to do things like this. And we love doing things like this. So please like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.